using UTM codes, you're stepping back and you're seeing, okay, I'm getting zero traffic from both of those channels, but I'm posting every single day and I'm paying someone to post every single day and do engagement on those, but I'm getting nothing in return. So it's almost like throwing money out the window. I always say, just go garden, because at least you'll get some like self-care versus just throwing that money out the window. So he's able to like take that money that he was investing in those two channels and turn it to the ones that are actually working.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the podcast that inspires action and helps you to grow your side hustle into a thriving income stream. Imagine being able to see exactly which social media platform is driving traffic to your website, or which campaign image is getting the most engagement. For you and I, this means no more guessing, no more wasting time, energy, or money in the wrong places. Today's conversation with Bonnie Conrad is all about UTM codes, what they are, and why you need to use them. Let's go. Well, welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Well, I've been really looking forward to our conversation because what we'll be talking about applies to pretty much everybody with a side hustle, because we all rely on some type of marketing for our business through social media, email, online campaigns, and somehow we need to know what's working and what's not. And I understand that's where UTM codes come in. If you can tell us what they are and frankly, why we should care.
Yeah, absolutely. So UTM codes, I always like to like preface this with it's not coding anything. So you're not coding any type of anything on a website or anything like that. So let's get the like scaries out of that. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. UTM codes are text that you add to a link that will help you track what is going on with all the links that you push out in the universe. A simple way of saying it, they help you water the flowers and prune the weeds. They are going to show you what is working, do more of that, and then they're going to show you what's not working and just get rid of that. So what they are is they are links that are going directly back to your website that you build based off of the campaign that you're running, the medium that you're sharing it on, the source, and those types of things. And so with those, you can I use the Google UTM Builder. It's a free thing through Google, and you plug in your specific tags for those parameters. And then on Google Analytics, you can see, okay, this campaign on Instagram did better than this campaign on LinkedIn because the way that you're plugging in those codes. And then all you're doing is just plugging in those tags and it provides you with a new link. And you use that link when you're sharing it out in the world. So like when you, for instance, if you click on something and you see this like super long URL at the top,
yes,
they're tracking that. They're figuring out where you're coming from, how long you're staying on the page, where you go to after that, and all those little things that come along with your marketing. Because I think the number one thing with your marketing is looking at your analytics and figuring out, like I said, what's working and what's not. Because a lot of times everyone loves to be on Instagram, for example, but like if your target audience isn't there and you're not driving revenue from that, then be somewhere else. UTM codes help you have a clear picture of what you should and shouldn't be doing.
Perfect. And we're going to get you to drill down on that a little bit more. How did you learn about them?
So I work with Innately. And so James that owns Innately and I partnered about just over a year ago. I actually started as a virtual assistant, loved marketing, jumped into marketing. I got a full ride scholarship to finish my degree in marketing.
Okay.
And then I started working with James. And I still, to this day, I'm like 4 classes away from finishing my degree. I've yet to hear any class or professor talk about UTM codes, which blows my mind.
Okay.
Because I'm like, these are so critical to tracking all of your marketing. And so James had mentioned, hey, I really think you should look at UTM codes because we should be using them within our business. So I did, and I went, full rabbit hole and like figured out everything that I possibly could about UTM codes, how to use them, how to track them, how like best practices. So it's been an interesting journey to see one, us utilizing them, and then two, teaching my clients how and why we're going to utilize these as well.
How did you find it affected your business? What did it do for yours?
So for us particular, we are dabbling with a few different audiences, and I wanted to see, all right, is our audience really active on LinkedIn? Are they active on Instagram? Like what platform is most of our traffic to our website coming from? And it was very shocking to know it was actually from Pinterest. We started using Pinterest about a year ago for our business, and that has drove the most traffic to our website than any other social media platform. I feel like it's a sneaky little like thing that a lot of people don't realize you can have your business on there. And, not necessarily, I don't see it so much for large high ticket items, but more driving traffic awareness, building authority, that type of thing for your marketing.
Okay. So walk us through an example, if you would, so that I get a clearer picture of how this actually works. We could use somebody launching a book as an example, or using something specific like your Pinterest example.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're launching a book. You want to see who is going to be really interested in this particular cover. Where in the social media realm are you going to get the most engagement from this? What you do is you're going to have your basic URL. You're going to have a code that goes back to your website. You're going to plug that URL into the campaign URL builder in Google Analytics. And you're going to put, okay, for the source, I'm going to put Pinterest. For the medium, I'm going to put social in there because it's a social media. And then for the campaign name, you can name it book cover.
Okay.
So you'll have a link for Pinterest for your book cover, but then you can create one that says, instead of Pinterest for the source, you're going to put Instagram. And you're going to have the same source or the same medium and the same campaign name. But once you get into Google Analytics, you will be able to see you're getting more traffic from Pinterest than you are on Instagram because they're clicking on that link.
So you're running either organic or paid ad in Pinterest using that Pinterest UTM.
Yep.
And then similarly, you'll do an ad campaign or organic through Instagram using that different one.
Yes. And you can see exactly where that traffic's coming from. Same thing if you have the same image on one social media platform, you can have image 1, image 2, and you can see, all right, this one's getting more traffic than this one. Or a carousel on this platform is getting more traffic than a carousel on this platform. It helps you really narrow in on what you should be doing, but also business-wise, it helps you narrow in on what you're paying for. So if you're paying for someone to do all this stuff for you on Instagram and you're making lots of I call it pretty noise, it's not targeted, but it's not bringing you in any type of ROI. There's no money coming in from it. I feel like you're wasting your time. And I feel like that's a hard thing for a lot of us to swallow because you're like, oh, well, I have 10,000 followers on Instagram. It's that's cool, but are they paying you? What's the goal that it's attached to?
Yes. So if the goal is to purchase the book, say, how do you know if it's generating revenue then? Because that link is going to a landing page to buy the book.
Yes. You can also, and this is kind of outside UTM code, you can also set up key events within your Google Analytics. This is out of my pay range, so this is not ideal. But I know the generalization of it. You can set up key events within your Google Analytics that show this is a purchase and this is where it came from. So you can really track that stuff. And I think back to the beginning of it's so important to track your analytics for your marketing because that's what's going to drive your optimization to the next level.
Mm-hmm. What's the biggest mistake you see people make when using UTM codes?
Making their tags too complicated. So I talk about these tags, and they're the words that you're putting into these buckets to make these UTM codes. They're making them too complicated. They need to be simple and they need to be consistent. We use a Google sheet to track our codes. So we know when we put a LinkedIn post for a specific campaign, we know that specific tag is going to be LI post or LI article. And so the consistency, because if you're not using the same exact code, you're going to get different numbers on Google Analytics. So it's not going to be all together. It's going to be separate lines, and it's going to be, it's just easier to read it all.
Right. Okay. Because the Google Analytics is only going to tell you about that specific tag. So if you change the name of it, it's going to show up separately.
Yep, it's going to show you two different types of traffic versus the same traffic, which is what you're wanting to like look for.
Okay. How can someone with limited resources start using UTM codes effectively? I'm thinking in terms of the do-it-yourselfers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I started out with. That's what my whole journey of marketing. I was a small business. I realized how stinking hard it was to like run my business and figure out marketing. So with UTM codes, everything that you can do is pretty much free. So you can go to Google, you can get the campaign URL builder, totally free. You can attach the Google Analytics to your website, also totally free. And then I always suggest creating some type of spreadsheet, whether it's on Excel or Google, whatever the case may be, and tracking those codes. So when you create a code, you don't have to create it again. So if it's for the same campaign and you're just going to run it again in 6 months on LinkedIn, you can use that same code. So you don't have to like keep recreating codes. So having a good tracking system is very important.
Okay. Walk us through, if you would, a real life example of how a business or someone with a side hustle used UTM codes to grow their business.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, let's say, for example, we have a client who a lot of his focus was on TikTok and on Instagram. And I knew right away that that's not his target audience. His target audience is 55 and older who are retired and want to play golf.
I love the clarity of that, Bonnie.
Yes, we know your target audience is not right there. And using UTM codes, you're stepping back and you're seeing, okay, I'm getting zero traffic from both of those channels, but I'm posting every single day and I'm paying someone to post every single day and do engagement on those, but I'm getting nothing in return. So it's almost like throwing money out the window, because you're like, I always say, you just go garden, because at least you'll get some like self-care versus just throwing that money out the window. So he's able to like take that money that he was investing in those two channels and turn it to the ones that are actually working, which is Facebook. And so many people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. But I'm like, that's where your audience is. And that's where you're going to get the traffic from. And so to see that result is amazing, because now there's like so much more traffic over here. There's more things going on over here. And they're not worrying about these other two channels that like, that's not where your target audience is. So that's a huge tip I always have for everyone, is knowing where your target audience hangs out and hang out there. You don't need to be on every single social media channel to be successful with your business.
That's a good point. And then your decision-making becomes data-driven and not emotional.
Exactly.
And then there's the case of someone like myself that when I take a look at where our listeners, where our viewers are, I've got a much younger male audience on YouTube, yet Spotify is older female.
Yes. And so that's a great point that you bring up. It's all about too of like, when you know that you have those kind of separate audiences on separate channels, you do have to edit and alter your message to engage them. It's all about like, where are you at in your marketing funnel, and knowing where that message and that marketing is falling in your funnel, and then customizing your message to meet those needs that they're looking for at that time that they're looking for you.
Okay, that makes sense. And so you mentioned turning to Google for the campaign URL builder.
Yes.
And to get the analytics going so that you can see what's happening. Are there any other tools or software you recommend for creating and managing those UTM codes easily, or?
For UTM codes, not really. I really like to keep it, it sounds like it's not simple, but I'd like to keep it very simple, of like not a lot of things going on, because, you only need what's going to work for you. And outside of UTM codes, the analytics that the channels give you too, those are also really important to look at. So not just looking at your UTM codes that you're building. And if you're not ready to do that, then that's okay. But looking at the analytics within the platform is really important too. And knowing the goals that you have for your business and what analytics or KPIs, the key performance indicators that you should be looking at, I think is really important.
Speaking of acronyms, what does UTM stand for?
It's Urgent Tracking Module.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. It was a program that Google bought years ago, but yeah, nothing to do with what you would think.
No. What should listeners look for in their analytics once they've added the UTM codes to their links? Is there something specific that you're looking there, or just where the traffic's coming from?
Well, it depends on your goals for your business. So, starting out with your marketing, you always need to have the goals that you have and how that is being attached to your marketing. That's a step that kind of gets stepped over that people often miss. And so if you don't know your goal, it's hard to match it with a number in Google Analytics. So, for example, if your goal is to drive traffic to your website, then you're looking at the user number, the amount of users, but also you want to look at how many seconds or how much time they're spending on your page. Because a bounce rate can really tell you a lot from a page. They could say, okay, you need to do something with this page because it's not holding their attention. But if your goal is lead generation, it's going to be different because you're going to look at, are they submitting this form that I'm trying to get their email address to have them learn more about me? So it depends on your goals.
Okay, fair. How can UTM codes help a side hustle person understand their audience better and maybe refine their messaging?
So it goes back to like the comparing the messaging of this is message 1, this is message 2. If your message is more clear cut and this is kind of like a analytics driven, you talk about lots of data, or if I'm more humor driven, I'm more just kind of go with the flow. And so you can look at both of those and have clear campaign names for them, but you can see, okay, my target audience, this is what they're liking more than they're liking this one. And so having those separate messages and seeing which one does better will help you optimize and grow.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, any advice for listeners who don't feel tech savvy but want to use UTM codes effectively to be able to drill down on their audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Start out small. Start out with one platform. Start out with your email platform, for example. And, I say that some email platforms do automatically generate their own UTM codes, and you will be able to see those on Google Analytics. So that's also something to keep in mind. Like we use MailChimp, for example.
Okay.
Love MailChimp. They will create their own UTM codes and you'll see them in your Google Analytics. But starting out small and starting out simple. So not some huge over-construed large campaign that's going to go over 6 months. Do something for 1 month and just use the source. So there's I think there's 5 specific tags that you can put into the boxes to create your new URL. You don't have to use all of those. You can just use the source and the medium, and then that's it.
Okay.
So just starting out small with just one platform, one medium, and then learning how to read your Google Analytics. And then when you're ready, then add something else. But I think starting out small and simple is the easiest way to do it.
Any recommended resources for reading Google Analytics? Because when you first take a look at the pages there, it's like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this and understand half of it.
It's so confusing. Google sometimes is not the easiest. So I want to say that they're learning platforms you could try, but I really have great success with YouTube. I feel like YouTube really, there's a lot of great creators out there that will break it down easy in a way that you can kind of understand it. If you just Google UTM codes for beginners and find some YouTube videos, they will definitely kind of give you more, I think, than if you want to go through Google's programs.
Sure. Remind me again what it is that you're plugging in You mentioned the categories in Google Analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 5 specific categories that we really talk about. So it's a campaign source, which example would be Pinterest.
The source is all the social media platforms.
Yes, the social media platforms, your newsletter. If you're doing something on Google, a Google ad, Google is your source. So it's where they're getting it from, the referrer, as they call it.
Okay. Source is one. Yep.
Yep. And then the next one is the campaign medium. So it's the marketing medium. So is it a banner? Is it an email? What are they looking at to get to that point?
That could be then a post on Instagram.
Yep. It could be. It could be. Yeah, it could be whatever you want it to be. I mean, there's a million different things you could make it as.
Yeah.
The campaign name is what campaign you're looking for. One of our biggest ones is blog traffic. Side note, don't use spaces in your tags. So when you're making tags, if you want a space, do an underscore or a dash, but don't put a space in there. So like, for example, our campaign name that I have in here right now is blog traffic. And we're just seeing where the traffic to our blogs is coming from. Is it more from our emails? Is it more from our LinkedIn posts? Is it more from other blogs?
Right. So if one of those sources of media is really crushing it and you're getting lots of traffic there, maybe switch gears and focus more on that.
Yep. Water the flowers and prune the weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then the last 2 is campaign terms. So this kind of identifies more paid keywords. So we don't use this one usually a lot because I'm really big on organic traffic. I say you really need to have a lot of great organic traffic before you invest in ads, because then you really know what your target audience is looking for.
Good tip.
Yes. And then campaign content. So this kind of is used to differentiate different ads. So when you're running ads, okay, this is video ad, this is single image ad. Those 2, I honestly don't use those very often. The top 3, the source, the medium, and the campaign name are what we use the most.
Okay. And you use UTM codes on all your organic media as well, right?
Yep. I say once you start using them, you really want to use them on all of your digital marketing period. So if you have a link going to someone else who has like a backlink to your site, use a UTM code, because then you're going to know, okay, when I have a link posted on the Side Hustle Hero website, I'm getting a lot more traffic than I am to this other website. And so you really can really see what you should be focusing on.
So the link that, say, you would provide me for our listeners to connect with you is going to have that tag in there.
Yep. It'll have a tag in there. It'll know exactly where it's coming from. And, a big reminder is when you're making these UTM codes and you're making these new URLs, they are only URLs that go back to your website. So you can't create a URL for your personal LinkedIn profile or your Instagram profile. It only is going back to your website.
So all these UTM codes that we've been talking about,
yes,
this is all just going back to the website.
Yes. So it's all goes to your website. So this is all what your website does. So if you are doing your sales on your website, you want, codes going to there. If blogs, other resources, anything on your website, these codes will tell you exactly where people are coming from.
That's a good point. So I can't imagine why I'd necessarily want to drive traffic to my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. And so I think that's a thing of like, oh, well, I want to know how many people are coming to my LinkedIn. It's like,
why?
Right? Yeah. What's the goal?
Yes. Well, being a newbie to this, is there something that I should have asked you about UTM codes that I haven't?
So I think naming conventions is so important. Keeping it simple, using lowercase. So don't use any uppercase, use all lowercase.
Why?
Because they are case sensitive. So if you accidentally put LinkedIn versus LinkedIn all lowercase and LinkedIn, capitalized, you're going to get 2 different analytics. So it's kind of like keeping consistent. Like I said, avoid using spaces or special characters in your codes. Double check your URLs before you use them. So make sure once you create them, They're very easy. So once you put all your stuff in on the UTM builder, it has the code right at the bottom. You can just copy it, but just make sure it works, because I have sent out emails with these awesome URLs and these awesome campaigns, and then
Oh,
you
no.
get emails back. It's like, Bonnie, this is not working. And it's like, okay, cool. Only 3,000 people got that. It's fine. No one will be upset.
And you're the only one that's ever done that, Bonnie.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
Right?
the only one. I've sent out emails with text at wrong and then subject lines. I've sent out emails like twice to the same people. Like, it happens.
Yes. And emails, you get the emails with the data field actually still in there rather than the person's name or date or whatever.
Yep. It says hi, quotations, first name.
Yes.
Just making sure that you're maintaining that like database of your UTM codes will be really important when you move forward and start growing and start using them more. So tracking them from the beginning is really going to help you.
That's fabulous. Well, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Bonnie?
Probably LinkedIn. I'm actually the most active on there now.
Okay.
I'm just Bonnie Conrad. And yeah, I think LinkedIn and our website is innately.com. So it's INN, the number 8, ly.com.
And I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes.
Yes. I will send you a UTM code for that.
Fabulous. So what's your best tip to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle dream?
Just do it. It's going to be messy, whether you know what you're doing or not. A lot of us don't know what we're doing. It happens. It took me a year to get a business bank account. So, I mean, it's okay. Everybody struggles. It's not going to be perfect at the beginning. It's not going to be perfect in the middle, and it's not going to be perfect throughout. But getting over that perfection is what's going to help you grow the most.
Yeah. So maybe it took you a year, but because of your persistence, you've grown the business. We've connected. We have this conversation today, and now you can help all these people, including myself, with UTM codes. So thank you so much for that, Bonnie, on your educating us and showing us how we can use UTM codes to increase the effectiveness of our marketing campaigns. And of course, thank you for being today's Side Hustle Hero.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be able to know that I am going to be able to help other people who are trying to grow their side hustle.
100%. As I mentioned in my intro, after talking with Bonnie about UTM codes, I decided to give them a try. She suggested starting with just a couple of tags, so that's what I did. I also gave the campaign a clear name so that I could easily see the results in Google Analytics that were coming from the test. The core URL I used was the About Joan page on the Side Hustle Hero website. Using Google's free campaign URL builder was surprisingly simple. It generated the expanded URL with all the necessary tracking code. I then took that URL, added it into an email, just as you would if you were emailing to your list, and I sent it to myself. I clicked the link a few times to generate data for Google Analytics and waited. Not so patiently, though, because Google Analytics, you don't see real-time results. You have to wait till the next day. When I did check the next day, nothing. No new data showed up from my link. There is so much about Google Analytics I don't understand, and honestly, I'm not interested in learning. So I turned to ChatGPT. I shared the link that Google's campaign URL builder had created for me and asked what the problem might be. In its typical rapid-fire style, it gave me a list of possibilities, and the solution was right there in number 2. Turns out the issue wasn't with the link or the setup. It was my browser. Some browsers, like DuckDuckGo, which I often use, or extensions as ad blockers and privacy tools, they strip out the tracking details from URLs. So when I clicked the link in DuckDuckGo, it brought me to the About page on the Side Hustle Hero site, which was great, but I could see that all the tracking info was gone from the URL, which meant that no data was being sent to Google Analytics. When I then tested the link in Microsoft Edge and in Chrome's incognito mode, everything worked perfectly because those lacked the privacy protections. So here's the takeaway. If you're testing UTM codes and you're not seeing the data in Google Analytics, try clicking the link in a private or incognito browsing window. This will help ensure that the tracking information stays intact for testing purposes. And my conclusion in this? Depending on how many of your visitors are using privacy-focused browsers or tools that block tracking, your data in Google Analytics will be incomplete and underestimated. But even with these limitations, Google Analytics can still provide us valuable insights into overall trends, even if it doesn't give us exact numbers of who's clicking our links. Well, that's a wrap for today. In the episode description, you'll find links to Bonnie's LinkedIn, to a blog post she wrote on this very topic, to Google's free campaign URL builder, as well as a link back to the full show notes, which live at our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, it would be so appreciated if you would take a moment and add your comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.